Daddy, chill.
Hello.
What was that? Hold on.
You haven't seen that?
No.
So this is the other half of that. This is so that person does the daddy chill thing, and then this is the response.
What the hell is even that?
Oh my goodness.
It's one of my favorite things. But yeah, so we're here to talk about. I am extremely interested about Vex moving to America and everything that she's had to do. I have known. I live in Arizona, right? Hey, look, it's Ken. How you doing, Ken? And I see Jacob's joined us. But I've lived in Arizona essentially my whole life, and I've known second and third generation immigrants. So I've never, and the person who decided to pick up and move their family was no longer with us. So I've never had the opportunity to, talk to someone about all of that. And I think I think about your adventure semi-frequently. I know it's weird, but and especially considering like the for lack of a better phrase, post-COVID era, like things are different. I'm sure they are.
Oh yes.
So how about we start off and you just kind of tell us about yourself, what you do. I've got you. I do have your links in the description, and I'll share those out here. Oh shoot.
Okay. I am Vex Electronica. I am a second generation Canadian now. My parents or first generation. I don't know how the generation thing works.
Okay. Yeah.
But my parents moved here. They moved to England first, and then from England they came here at the end of the 80s, like 1990, and then I was born here. So I've been here my entire life. I've jumped around careers now, but right now I'm in education. I'm looking to make YouTube a full-time thing for a variety of reasons, mainly so I can, when I start a family finally, I can actually raise my own children instead of having to look into daycare services and whatnot, which I'm sure all of us are kind of aware what kind of people are running childcare and working in public education and what they're teaching our kids, right?
Yeah.
So I want to avoid that as much as possible. So that's why I'm really trying to make content creation work. Because that's ultimately the end goal. I just want to be a full-time mother. My husband is a American citizen, born and raised. He's basically been in Florida his whole life. I think he moved to West Virginia for about a year. But other than that, he born in Florida, still in Florida. So we met, and I very much, as I don't want to phrase this in a way where it sounds like I'm just looking for a visa, but I love him very dearly, and he's the person I see myself having children with and spending the rest of my life with. And at the same time, being an American citizen has always been, I guess, somewhat of a pipe dream for me. Because I very much, for all the faults that your country may have, compared to living in Canada, there is just so much more opportunity. It really is the land, like looking as an outsider in, it truly is the land of the free, right? So we got married on October 1st of 2021, and November 3rd, 2021, I filed my paperwork with the US government to immigrate as a spouse.
I would. So like now, so I've actually known someone who did this. Like my ex-brother-in-law, he married someone who was from the Philippines or something, but she already had a work visa. So it probably wasn't like that big of a deal.
Yes.
As opposed to like, yeah. So like what you had to file your paperwork to move as a spouse of a citizen. Now, do you know what? Oh, hey, look, Duke Devil stopped by, and he's actually out in the UK right now.
What's up, Duke?
But so like, do you know anything about the difference of coming in as someone who married somebody as opposed to someone who's just trying to get here? Like, is there much as far as the paper process or anything like that?
I don't think there's a huge difference in the paper process. I think it's a little bit easier, if anything, because when you apply for a visa, there's like 6 or 7 or 8 different ones that you can apply for.
Okay.
And with each of them, you have to have like a pretty valid reason. Like it could be your moving, like refugee status, work status. There's different ones for like family or spousal support. Maybe you're getting married to a US citizen, so you can get a temporary visa for that kind of thing. But from when we applied for the whole like legally from outside of the US applying for it, there's has to be a specific reason that you want to come. It can't just be, "Oh, I want to live in the US."
But so now I'm going off of what obviously I've never looked into this. I've
Mhm.
never wanted to live anywhere. I agree with you. For the time being, America is still the best country in the world. We're the only
Mhm.
place that has the First Amendment. No one else has the First Amendment, and very few have the second. So
Mhm.
that's winning. But like when I thought when you married a citizen, you pretty much just like, yep, here you go. Is that not the case?
That's not the
Like,
case,
like,
no. I wish that were the case.
do you
So
think that changed after COVID? Is that maybe why you're having so much pushback?
so
Because we're
there's
almost 2 years. We're almost 2 years now. It'll be 2 years in
I
like 2 months.
know. I know, almost 2 years, just shy of 2 years. So there's a couple different ways I could have applied for this. I think we were pretty open with a lot of our closest friends and whatnot that we were planning to get married, which kind of screwed us over for one of the options. So you can
Mhm.
get like a fiance visa, which is what you see in that whole like 90-day fiance show or whatever.
Oh, yeah, I've never
So
watched it, but okay.
okay, so, like, the whole premise of that show is people get, granted a 90-day fiancé visa, and basically once that's granted, you have 90 days to come to the US and get married on US soil, and
Okay.
then within depending on when you get married, then it's usually, like, 6 to 12 months, and then basically your visa gets approved, right? The other
Uh-huh.
way is so, like, yeah, there's 3 ways, so that's the first way. The second way is the route which we did, in which we got married, but I'm a spouse living in a foreign country, so you apply as just a foreign spouse of a US citizen. That takes a bit longer. It's generally what I was told was 18 months, but we'll get into it later that COVID basically delayed that process a lot. Um, but yeah, it takes about 18 months. And then instead of just being granted straight the like residency visa, you also get kind of the work visa and all that stuff, which is what we were looking at because I didn't want to my husband makes a good living, but to support 2 people plus pay a mortgage and all that stuff, it makes for a very tight
Mhm.
budget, right? So I
Right.
wanted to be able to, as soon as I come in, be able to get decent work so that financially we were more comfortable, right? The third way is just like you just spontaneously get married on US soil. And
Mhm.
if you choose to do that, then both individuals have to stay in the US during the 6 month period that it takes to approve all that. And for me, like I said, we had told people that we were planning to get married. And on top of that, um, I couldn't I can't just up and abandon everything I've like built
Right.
here in Canada for 6 months, right? Like I run a business up here, my family is here, my pets are here. So the idea of just, cutting all ties for 6 months, um it it would have burned a lot of bridges as well that I ideally am glad I didn't like
Right.
burn
Because
in the end.
unless I'm mistaken, the business you're running there also has like children invested in you.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
learning, like, it's an education business, right? So that's the other thing. It's like there are people that know me and a lot of the like there's quite a bit of success in our business that has been built just on me physically being there, me being able to talk to parents, to communicate with them on a regular basis. And I consider my employer to be a godsend, not for just what that job has done for me like mentally and emotionally, but because she has been incredibly lenient and open-minded and understanding of the numerous situations I've been in the almost 6 years I've been there, right? So
Okay.
that's like even once I moved to the US, like that's not a bridge I want to close off because it's given me so much opportunity just on its own, being there. So yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't want to leave for 6 months and
Yeah.
then damage that as well. So that's why we kind of went with the foreign spouse, and that also gave us the opportunity to kind of more or less have the wedding that we wanted as well. Like, yes, it was small and there were only 5 of us, but like
Hmm.
it wasn't just in a courtroom. I got to wear a dress and have photos taken and all that stuff, and we wouldn't have been able to do that kind of with the quickie 6 month option.
So Tyler's decided to show up, and he likes you, but he mostly hates me. Uh, and that's okay.
Hi, Tyler.
And then Steven's got a good question here. He's asking, is there an educational route, an association that could grease the reels? Something, you want to be a teacher over here or something. I don't know. Like,
Right. So this is where the COVID angle comes in, unfortunately. So, um, in October 2021, so when you apply as an immigrant to the US, regardless of which way you apply, whether it's work or marriage or family or whatever, there are some pretty strict things that the US government requires from you. And part of that is like a medical examination, which requires a up-to-date vaccination schedule of specific vaccines. So there's some of the typical ones that most of us got as children, like the MMR and polio and
mhm,
what's the other one, like tetanus shots, right? But in October 2021, they added the COVID vaccine on there. And even for just getting something like a work visa, there were a lot of businesses at the time who were still kind of in that, I guess, early framework where they were requiring that, if you're an employee of XYZ organizations, then you need to have this shot and you need to be up to date on it and you need to be able to like provide proof of it. So, and this is kind of the holdup I have right now is I'm not really against strictly just the COVID vaccine. I have a very tumultuous relationship with modern medicine in general
yes.
that has been ongoing since I was a teenager. So
Okay.
in that respect, like yeah, there's some things I do that maybe I shouldn't. Like occasionally I'll have a cigarette, when I
Okay.
when I go to a rave, like I usually do pop MDMA, right? Like
Yeah,
those are things that
I can completely understand that. Yes.
right. But it's just like aside from, those few kind of occasional things, I'm extremely careful with what I put in my body, whether it comes to my diet or even just like if I get sick, I don't take cough syrup because I like with the studies that are out there, it's shown that it does harm your immune system over the long term with exposure.
Hmm.
I don't even take aspirin when I get a headache as well. In terms of like serious bacterial infections or like congestion and stuff like that, if I need like prescription steroids, I do my best to avoid them. I think I was in the
Hmm.
ER for like a stress slash hive related issue, which required me to go on like a short, like a week long steroid course. And I didn't want to, but like it was the only thing that was going to help alleviate some of the discomfort I had. And even after that course was done, it's just like I could feel that my body was feeling effects from it, right? It didn't feel right.
Uh-huh.
So in that so when I found out that that was kind of a requirement to get into the US, like I was pretty like upset. Uh because the other thing too is I have like an exemption. It's from a physician that I'm registered with in Florida, but I
Uh-huh.
can't use that here in Canada at all because the standard
Right.
is different. And Canada is still very much riding the wave of you need to have X, Y, and Z shots in order to work here. You need this until recently, you need to just enter the country. You needed that even if you were a citizen. To go to the movies, you needed to show like it was all on an app too. It wasn't just a paper that you guys were doing where it's pretty easy
Right.
to forge. No, it
Yeah.
was all digitally tracked so they could see the batch number, the exact date, the physician or nurse who authorized the shot. Like they had all
Uh-huh.
that detail, so it
And
wasn't
it's
as easy to forge, right?
and it's all in a
Um
database somewhere that they can just connect to whenever they damn well want to verify it.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So that made travel a little bit difficult, but again, I'm a Canadian citizen, so they can't deny me entry to the country, right?
Did you
But
ever have to
yeah,
do the whole thing where you had to like stay in the camp for a month or whatever when you went back?
oh, I have a story about that actually. So, in June 2021, I decided I'd fly down to Orlando to see my
Uh-huh.
husband, right?
Yeah.
And at that time, I was just like, I don't want to go on a plane because I know I like for a fact that I'm going to get a lot of hassle. And the nearest international airport to me is Toronto Pearson, which is one of the three largest airports in Canada. So for sure, I knew that of all the places that I could possibly be traveling out of, there was going to be a lot of enforcement there.
Mhm.
So when I flew out, it was not a problem because the US was still like they weren't enforcing a lot of things, right? You were still allowed to travel in. But coming back, I remember my flight landed around 10:30 in the evening, and when you enter Canada, like usually on the flight, they will give you a piece of paper that says, like, declares, like, are you bringing in X amount of money? Are you bringing in tobacco, livestock, all of that stuff, right?
Right.
They changed it to an app during COVID for the whole
Oh,
like tracing reasons, essentially.
of course.
And so I had filled out the app appropriately and all that stuff, and I was honest. Like specified on the app that I don't have my two shots because as much as I'd like to like lie about certain things, it's also I just like I don't want to be arrested for some stupid thing as lying on a fucking app, right? Because I
Mhm.
know the Canadian government at that time was not beyond arresting people in their own home for supposedly breaking social distancing rules. So I got to Toronto Pearson and they funnel you out of, out of the terminal and whatnot. And then there's like a kiosk area that you come to where it's the same thing. You validate your passport, you enter in all the information that you put on the app about, what you're bringing into the country and how long you were away. And then it gives you a little printout, and then you go into another line, and there are border security agents there that just ask you more specific questions about how long were you gone, what were you doing, who were you with, yada yada yada. And basically from there, they'll determine, okay, you're fine, like go ahead and get your luggage. So while I was at that lineup, now it's approaching like 11:30 or so. They I guess because it's I had to go through the kiosk first. Again, it's all digital, right? So they can get notices for all this stuff. So they had pulled me aside and said like you need to line up and talk with public health because like aside like just adjacent to those border security agents were two long tables, and there were about four or five like public health agents, and then there was a
Uh-huh.
group of six Toronto police officers standing right next to those tables chatting. So
Okay.
I said, yeah, I'm just like, okay, whatever. So I waited in this lineup. I was in that lineup for maybe like 45 minutes, and there were only like six other people in that line too. They were just taking their sweet fucking time with it. And finally I get to a public health agent, and it's close to like 12:31 in the morning at this point, and I had called a cab to come pick me up because my parents are much older, and night vision is not their strong suit, and I just didn't want to bother them because it was a weekday
Right.
on top of that, right?
Yeah.
Um so I had already gotten like a text message from the cab driver saying like, "Hey, I'm waiting outside." I'm just like, "I've been, they're holding me up. Please wait." Right? So I sit down with the public health agent, and it's this uppity little cunt, and she's just like, "Why? Like, how come you don't have your shots? Yeah, where are you going to stay? Like, who lives there with you?" And because like elderly people were propped up as kind of the most vulnerable during this
Right.
whole thing, they're just like, "You can't go back to that house because both of your parents are over the age of 65. They're vulnerable." I'm like, but they're both like I lied about that part, but I'm just like, but they're both vaccinated. Like, why does it matter? And this is my home address. Why are you like keeping me from
Right.
going from my
This is
home
where I
address?
live.
Like, exactly. And they're just like, "Oh, no, 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 because they're at risk, like we can't let you go there. Like we need to be able to call them and get confirmation that you're allowed to go to that address. Otherwise, we're going to have to put you on a bus and send you to a quarantine site for the next 3 to 7 days." And I'm like, "Are you fucking kidding me right now?" I just didn't hold any punches with this woman. As I'm just thinking like, as you're saying this to me, do you understand how ridiculous all of this sounds? Like, I'm a Canadian citizen. I have no criminal record. I was just in the US for 2 weeks. Like, you're denying me going to my place of residence because my elderly parents also live there. Like, this is, and you want me to call them at almost 1 a.m. on a weekday to confirm that I can come home. So I called them anyways, and of course they're not picking up because it's so late. And I can see this woman she's writing down a ticket because they were fining people for not following the quote unquote
Uh-huh.
quarantine rules.
Yeah, they were charging you for anything they could come up with.
Exactly. So, and it's finally on like the sixth or seventh call, someone picked up and I gave the phone to the officer, and and then it's just finally she kind of let me go. But when she let me go, she slapped me with a $6,250 fine for
What the
breaking the quarantine rules.
what?
I I actually I got two of those $6,000 fines during the height of COVID, and for both of them, I filed immediately with the court. I have never gotten a court date still 2 years later. I
Really?
haven't even, yeah, I haven't even gotten so much as like an email notice that it's still pending or whatnot. So I know that some people though did end up having to go to court and pay the fee. So I know it's a bit of
Okay.
a mix and match situation. And so after they let me go through public health and through border security, then they walk you through it used to be just like the welcoming area in that terminal for people getting off the flights, but they converted it into basically a medical testing site. So you go
Right.
in, you scan your passport, you get another printout, then you go along and you get it was like a slip of paper confirming your landing and whatnot. Then you keep walking along and you sit down with a nurse, and that nurse does the nose swab. They do it
Mm-hmm.
twice, and they get you to sanitize and blow your nose and all that stuff, and then they put it on one of the rapid tests to determine whether you have it, and then they hand you two take home tests, and they're like, you have to do, because you are expected to quarantine at home for 14 days after travel. So they're like, you
Uh-huh.
have to take one of these on day 3 and one on day 8. And the one that you do on day 8, you have to do virtually with an online nurse to make sure that you're not faking
Oh
the
my
test.
God.
Because that day 8 test, you have to mail out to the Canadian government so they can verify that you are, in fact, not contagious. So, I didn't
Holy.
I think the first time I complied because it was so fresh, but then the second
Right.
time they did that, I just tossed the fucking test in the trash. Because they also said that there will be officers that will come by your home to make sure that you're quarantining as well. And I live out in the middle of nowhere. So for an officer to come out here, like, it's legitimately a proper trip and not worth it for maybe just one person in the area, right? Whereas
Mhm.
I've met with other people that live closer to the Toronto area, and because they're in a more densely populated area and there's more people, of course, traveling, they actually got visits from police officers.
Oh my God.
But so I did the day 8 test with the nurse on the thing, and then you had to book a pickup appointment through Pure Later, which is like our FedEx basically. And they had to, yeah, schedule time to pick it up. And they said, leave it in a cool, dry area where it's easily picked up, where you're not going to come into contact with anyone. So I'd done the test. I go to the website to book the pickup thing, and there's no pickup for 2 days. And I'm just like, I've done this test. I, like, just from basic knowledge, I know that if you take a sample of something, you either refrigerate it immediately or you give it immediately to whatever body is processing it, right?
Right.
And so no one was there. So I was like, okay, I should probably just leave it in the fridge. And I called like a helpline or something, like, hey, like, the pickup isn't available for 2 days. What do I do with my sample? Because the other thing too is I knew that if you keep it out or you don't store it properly, like at a specific temperature, even,
It's
that
not gonna matter.
damages the sample.
Yeah.
Right. And they're just like, oh no, it's fine. You can just leave it out. It took
Oh,
4 days for them to come and pick up that sample.
so it's all horse shit.
It's all fucking horseshit. And
Yeah.
what's even worse is that even if those results weren't accurate because of how the sample was stored, that was still counted towards all the COVID data in the country.
Uh-huh. Right. Yep.
Yeah. I
Oh
don't
my
remember
God.
how we got onto that
I
tangent, but yeah,
well,
the
well,
quarantine
because
hotel.
yeah. Uh well, yeah, because you were talking about head coming down to Orlando, not this most recent June, but the one before it. And I was like,
Mhm.
oh, did they have you stay in one of the camps? But like, if I was you and in that airport and that woman was trying to make me not let me go home or something, I probably would have ended up arrested because I would have been yelling. And
Right. And that's because I was like looking to get married and I knew that if I got arrested that would show up on a record.
yeah,
I was rude to the woman because she was being a fucking cunt. But on top of that I was like it's not worth getting a criminal record over this, right? So that's why I intentionally kind of yeah, I played it cool. I didn't want to get arrested.
yeah, I would have lost my shit.
Mhm.
What do you mean I
Yeah.
can't go home?
Right. I know. As a citizen, I'm a citizen here.
Yeah,
Well like
yeah. And even like, yeah, that whole thing. So where was it? There was a question from DJ Axis.
Mhm,
He was asking, so yeah, she's already applied. She applied almost 2 years ago now at this point,
mhm.
and asking if you're still in the 2 year period of lawful permanent residence. I don't know if that means you would have already had to have been like living here or something with the visa.
Yeah, I would have had to already be there with a visa. So no, like I'm still waiting. Bleh, I'm still waiting to get my visa. Like
Okay.
almost 2 years in, I'm waiting for that. So I have an appointment for like the final step, which is like an interview with a UCIS officer. I have that scheduled for October 16th, actually. But with the whole vaccine thing, I've had to file another waiver, which could potentially delay me getting my visa now from anywhere from 5 to 21 months, unfortunately. Um, so when you apply, if
That's a big window.
I know it's a huge window, and like I talked in length with, so okay, hold on, I'll tie it in. So
Okay.
in that list of like in the medical requirements, right, with that vaccine list, you can apply for like a medical waiver or a vaccine waiver, and there's two ways that you can go about it. The first way is that you get a physician to just sign off on this person doesn't want this for XYZ reasons, and done. That gets usually approved in a month or two, but it has to be done by a Canadian physician. And in
Hmm.
Canada, you, at least in Ontario where I am, you run the risk of losing your medical license if you promote any sort of quote COVID misinformation or vaccine misinformation. So
Okay.
the going the route of getting a Canadian physician to sign off on it was immediately eliminated just for that reason. So the second way that I can go about is a moral or religious reason. I'm not super religious. I do like I'm practicing in some ways and I do believe there's a God and whatnot, but I'm not
Yeah.
so religious that I could go on that ground. So I went the moral route. And like I told the second lawyer that I hired 2 weeks ago, kind of what I told you is that I'm very careful with what I put in my body. I don't I've had a lot of, various health issues from, digestive to hormonal to mental health. They found a cyst on one of my ovaries last year as well, which was very concerning. Um, so for a lot of reasons, I don't take certain things. And on top of that, according to public health records, I haven't gotten a vaccine of any kind since 2006 when I was still a minor. So
Uh-huh.
the case for even just my moral convictions is actually very good because he's like, you're not picking and choosing like a lot of other clients that I've had in recent years are doing. Like you have a pretty extensive medical history, like showing why you do what you do and why you're choosing not to get certain things. So he said in that respect, like there's a very good chance that that waiver will be approved. It's just because of, COVID continuously locking down federal government operations, the process for approving even those like moral religious waivers has gone from like a month or two, like the other one, to 5 to 21 months. So
Have
the
has he said of any like any instances where like are they like what how, are they like what's the ratio of rejection to exception when it comes to these moral slash religious purposes? Like, is there any stats on that?
Um, so he gave me just based on what he's done, and he's done almost 25 of these, and he's only gotten
Okay.
two rejected, right?
Okay.
But
Nice.
even then, it's like with the majority of the ones that he's already done, it's like they've been people that will take like a tetanus shot, but they just don't want the COVID vaccine. Like that's it, right?
Right.
Whereas with me, you can see like it's been 17 years since I
Uh-huh.
got anything. So it's like I'm not picking or choosing. Like my moral convictions are pretty fucking strong, comparatively.
Well,
But
and
yeah,
it's not even like what's fucked up is like you're having to call it moral reasons, but really it's for like your own fucking safety. because of all the
Pretty
other health
much.
shit you've had going on, but they've made it impossible in Canada for that to be even for you to even be eligible of that, because if anyone said anything about, horse paste or something, they immediately lost their medical license, right?
Exactly, exactly. And it's like it's not the there have been so many times throughout the years, even before this whole COVID shtick, where physicians are just they're pushing shots on me. Like I guess you're not a woman, so you wouldn't get a pap smear, but they're
Not
like
recently,
I think
no.
right. Like 7 or 8 years ago, there was, an HPV shot that they were really
Yep.
pushing on women, right? And it was like, it would prevent you from getting this, and it would make you, more resilient against certain bacteria and yada, yada, yada. And then it came out, I think, right before COVID or right after COVID started, that these were actually leading to a lot of ovarian issues, infertility, and even cancers in some women. And that was
Oh,
something
really?
that my own gynecologist had been pushing on me a lot.
Yeah.
Um, Even when I switched gynecologists, like I had an IUD, an
Hmm.
intrauterine disease, right, to
Yep.
prevent pregnancy. And even when I got that, I'd done a lot of research, and I told the physician, like after I had gotten it, like I'm noticing that I've gained weight that's not coming off, even though I'm taking care of myself. And it
And
was
that's
far more than just the 5 pounds that he said I would gain.
yeah, that's
And
and that's just a minor side effect of those things.
well, the bigger side effect was that I stopped having a period for 5 years,
Yeah.
and the guy was just like, "Oh, that's completely normal." I'm
Yeah,
like, "Are
that's
you
that's that's not a bug, that's a feature.
right, I'm just like, are you sure? Because like, aside from, just being a regular function, like, having a monthly regular period is a reflection of that your body is, in fact, doing well. It's healthy, it's regular, like, everything is where it should be, right? And then it came out in, I think, 2021 that women that had gotten the Mirena IUDs, like, they're in a lawsuit right now still, I believe. They were having all the symptoms I were having, and physicians weren't told any of this. So they were just passing it off as, oh, that's a normal side effect because we don't know any
Mhm.
better. So it's just like all of these like little things that ended up adding. I'm still feeling the after effects of having that IUD almost, actually no, three, almost 2.5 years later. Like
Wow,
I'm still
okay.
struggling with a hormone imbalance and weight issues because that threw me off, like, so out of sync with every other
Yeah,
function of my body. So yeah, there's a lot of reasons. Those are just two, right? Like there's
yeah,
a lot of reasons why I don't trust modern medicine. And there's a lot of reasons why I look deeply into everything that I'm putting into my body, because I have such a delicate ecosystem that I need to manage just for me alone. I don't know. Everyone's body reacts differently to things, right? So
right. So, like, have you met anyone else in Canada with, like, not obviously not like no one's gonna have the exact same health issues, but, with, like, a similar situation where things just don't work well for them that are, like, the the mainstream way of being healthy, you know what I'm saying? Have you ran across anyone else in Canada with that, and have they've, like, worked around any of the bullshit that they've had going on? This has become a COVID talk now, but hey.
like I've met a couple people that have like other health issues that they keep like the doctors seem not to be figuring out the problem, right? And I guess like on some level they'll recognize that there's an issue there, but they just keep going back to the doctor. Like it's almost like they're intentionally ignorant to the fact that maybe you should just listen to your body instead of listening to a physician, right?
Mhm.
I do see like a functional medical specialist or like a naturopath. I have been seeing one of those for almost 11 years now at this point for various issues. And in that time, like I have met some of his other patients who also, they've been let down by the modern medical system, or they've been given things that caused more issues than solved issues. So now this has been the alternative that's worked for them, right? Like a few months ago I met a woman who had recently been diagnosed with cancer, and she really 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 did not want to do the chemotherapy because of
Mhm.
all the potential side effects should it work, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
her alternative instead is, because I don't want those things, I'm going to try a more holistic approach, right? And she was pretty, like, she was strong in her conviction doing that as well, right? She had no problems.
Yeah, that whole cancer thing is interesting. I've known someone who did something to defeat his, and yeah, he he had a for lack of a better term, shitty cancer, and so he stuffed things up his shitter, his CBD oil, and apparently that set everything straight. But
There you go. And for
not a
yeah,
doctor.
but for some people the CBD treatment does work, right?
Yeah,
So yeah, kudos to them. If it
he was
works,
like
it
making
works.
his own and shit. Like he was like he was always a big pothead, and like yeah, he had a process. But yeah. So you mentioned you're on your second lawyer. You don't currently have two lawyers working together to get you into this country, do you?
I have two lawyers right now.
So you
Yes.
still it's not that you just changed lawyers. You literally have two lawyers working on different parts of the same thing.
Yes. So
Holy shit.
we when we applied originally, it was just kind of like I want to make sure that we do this right the first time because on top of actually like
Okay.
submitting a bunch of stuff, like there are a lot of fees. It's like $2,000 to $3,000 worth of application fees that you file with the government. So if you
Okay.
fuck something up, you've got to pay all of those again. It's not like they'll give you a notice like, "Hey, you forgot this." It's like, "No." They'll reject it and then you got to start the whole process again. So we hired a lawyer down in Boca Raton just to make sure that not only are we meeting all the requirements, but we just get it right the first time so that we don't have any concerns.
Okay. That makes
But
sense.
yeah, unfortunately though, they didn't have anyone on staff that dealt with the whole vaccine waiver thing. So they recommended me to this other guy in Kansas, and I connected with him through a phone call 2 weeks ago, and he's like, "Yeah, like we can do this for you." And so now they're kind of working like they're up to date, like they're keeping each other up to date, but it's yeah, two different parts of the same case that they're working on.
Okay. That's that's insane. The first one makes sense, but then it sounds like the COVID shit is what has brought on the second one. And it sounds like he's going to be able to help you.
Yes. What what actually upset me even more when I originally found this out is our first lawyer had told me that after you have that visa interview, like in October, like
Mhm.
provided everything else is a okay and good to go, it would have
That's
taken
that's what's happening October 16th, you said?
yeah, I'm having my official
Okay.
interview. So this other guy working on the vaccine waiver, he said like, "Listen, don't rebook it. What will happen is you'll go ahead and do the medical and do the official interview and it will just like on your file it would just say that you have a waiver pending. You
Okay.
don't have to worry about it. They're not going to deny you. It just means that like you'll have finished all these other steps and just missed one, really. That's it." So I'm like, "Okay, that's fine. I'll go ahead with it." Um but yeah, they my first lawyer had told me like if everything had been okay and none of this vaccine shit had been there, it would have taken you at most 15 business days to get your visa and you could have moved to the US after that. So I'm literally at the end and this is like a a fucking vaccine is holding me back. That's
Yeah.
it.
So you're telling me this, and I'm like, are you at the point where you could feel like you could start getting excited yet?
No,
No.
because it's like again, if everything were okay, then yeah, I would be excited
Yeah.
because that means like by mid-November at the very latest, I would have my US visa and I can be out of Canada by December, right? But
Which would be
I'm not
perfect freaking timing.
right. And it's just like I can't be excited anymore because yeah, there's a chance this vaccine waiver might get approved sooner because, USCIS was going to see that oh, she has one pending, maybe we'll just take a look at it, right? But the
Right.
approval
Right.
time for that is so like uncertain that I can't like I just kind of feel upset because I'm going to be 32 at the end of this year and if it is on the tail end of things like I'm going to be like pushing 34 by the time that I finally move down there. And again, another concern for me is just I know women can still have children, pushing 40 even after
Yeah.
40, but just your chances of risks are higher. You have less of a chance of successfully conceiving. Like there's a lot more hurdles. So I'm already kind of in that time frame where it's like I'm pushing it and by then I'll be pushing it even more.
So, do you feel this with what DJ Axis is saying? He says, yeah, nearly
Yep,
every single form you file in the U.S. CIS costs a fee. You basically begin your U.S. citizenship in debt.
pretty much. You better have some money on hand if you even plan like anything you're planning. Like, it's going to cost you a pretty penny.
And Samuel had a comment about his grandma. His grandma beat cancer 7 times and died 23 years after they gave her 2 years to live. Your grandma
That's
sounds kind of like a
awesome,
badass.
right?
Okay.
DJ
And then,
Access, yes. I am aware that they're going to make me undergo another biometrics exam, but by then it's like I'll be in the US, I have my vaccine exemption. Who even knows if it will still be on the vaccine list because there's been so much information coming out just over the last year, out of the federal courts about how these aren't working for anyone, right? So yeah, I'm aware of that, but I just don't think my hurdle will be the same by the time that arrives.
right, because you've already got that doctor in your pocket, just
Exactly. And I'll
so
already
to
be on
say.
US soil, right? So,
Well,
uh,
Blair has spoken. He thinks we need to protect the U.S. from Canadian immigration. We're full.
you know
Uh,
what, Blair? To that I say, kick out all the fuckers that hate the US and want to burn your country down and let me
yeah,
come in instead
yeah.
because I don't
We
want to
should
burn your country down.
we should send all these self-proclaiming commies to China and Cuba and such, and tell them to enjoy their lives there. I'm all right with that, and
Listen,
we'll even keep the
have
ones
them
coming from below.
right, and just have them come to Canada instead. Like everyone thinks that Canada is this great place and is
You
like,
know what?
no,
Yeah,
the cost of living is insane. You can't, if you live in the more urban areas too, you can forget having any sort of social life because you won't be able to afford it. Food in some respects has become more scarce or has just stopped production altogether because there are so many green policies and taxes that throttle food production up here. On top of that, basically every work sector that you can think of in some way or another is controlled by either the provincial or the federal government, which means then there's a bunch of rules that you have to follow there. So, for example, in Ontario, 2/3 of the population are employed in some way or another by the provincial government. And because the government is providing their livelihood, that means that they have to follow all the COVID
yeah.
rules, put X, Y, and Z into their bodies. Their income is throttled. What they can do is throttled.
Two,
If you're 2/3. Yeah,
two.
that's so fucking insane, right? Childcare is provided by the government now
No,
as well.
no, 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 no.
Like, there are so many things that it may, at face value, maybe you don't notice it every day, but once you've been here living in it, it's just like, I
Mm-hmm.
truly don't have a lot of control over my life. So, yeah, for real, send all those fucking commies to Canada and let me come to the US and see how they feel.
Yeah, I agree. You know, they can go to Canada and they can finally experience their government-controlled healthcare that they want so badly, and
Mhm.
just go enjoy their time. They can, you guys have Toronto, which is I hear is a great place if you like that shitty life, city
It's
life.
a fucking cesspool.
Yeah, yeah. uh, that sucks that you don't feel like you're at the part where you can be excited yet, because I was almost getting excited for you when you were discussing like how this
Oh,
could happen. I was like, yes, it's happening, but yeah, that sucks.
for real. But I mean, like, the good news is I can still travel into the US here and there. And
Yeah,
now that I've switched down to part-time because I, again, like, ideally the plan was that I would be gone from my job by now, and so we had put in a lot of things or like hired people a year ago to make sure that my position was fully covered. But I've switched to part-time now so I can focus a little bit more on YouTube, and that gives me a lot more freedom to just go down and see my husband a lot more frequently than every 4 to 6 months, right? Um and on top of that, like, I absolutely love going to the border because sometimes the US agents will just be they'll give me a side eye because they're like, you really shouldn't be traveling in between if you've got a visa in the works, like some of them. But like, even though your agents are supposed to be checking for, the papers and whatnot,
right.
they're so over it. Like, they understand,
Yeah,
like, even though they work for the government, they understand that the government is full of shit. And
So
it's like it's such a night and day contrast, because then I come to fucking Canada, and Canada's border agents are still fucking obeying, Adolf Trudeau over here with everything that he's implemented, even though deep down that they know it's bullshit.
I wonder if they're maybe more micromanaged and like they've got more people breathing down their neck than they do here. You know what I
That
mean?
might be it, I think. Because but at the same time, like, there have been several instances where I've encountered like Canadian border agents, and they're just doing fuck all. Like, actually fuck all. There was one time where, so like, to work around having to fly directly into Canada, I would just cross the US border and get a flight from Buffalo in New York, right?
Okay.
Because they wouldn't pull all of this shit, and they wouldn't, it was just a far easier experience.
Yeah.
So there was one time where I had gotten off the flight and was going back to Canada. So I got into a taxi, and then they wouldn't let the taxi across because I didn't have my vaccine papers. So in the middle of winter, I had to walk like 2 kilometers across the fucking Canadian border.
Okay.
And then it was pushing midnight at this point, and they detained me at the border office, and there's like almost 10 officers just fucking lollygagging around, like, doing absolutely nothing. I'm the only person sitting in this entire building, and they're just taking their sweet fucking time with everything, passing jokes while at the same time they're like, "Oh, we can't let you in because your passport looks a little bit odd, or you don't have this," right? It's full of such fucking horseshit, man.
So yeah, because they're just not they're just there to hang out. They don't care
That's
about
really all it is, because their
yeah.
job is safe no matter what. Like, they get a
Yeah.
cozy paycheck. All they have to do is fucking show up. That's it. It doesn't matter. So they, like, ultimately, most of them don't even have like that moral compass that you should have when you go into positions of authority. They just follow whatever rules are set forth, and there's no gray area. A kilometer. Okay, so I think a mile is, one mile is
5,280
equivalent.
feet.
Yeah, so it's equivalent to almost 2 kilometers. It's like 1.9 kilometers.
Okay. For some reason I thought it was oh yeah, I thought it was like 2.2 miles in a kilometer or something. But maybe it's
Other way.
one.
Oh, it might be the other way around. No, no, mile is definitely bigger than a kilometer. Maybe it's
Okay.
2.2 kilometers for every mile,
Okay.
somewhere around there. But almost a mile, yes.
Yeah.
I'm learning the miles and inches and
It's
feet
all
as
fucking
I go.
retarded. I like yeah, the metric system is obviously much easier to comprehend, but
It is.
just on a math basis, but like knowing what the actual distance is means nothing to us Americans, right?
I
Like
totally understandable. Totally understandable.
and then like a mile is 5,000. I think a mile is like 5,280 feet or
It is.
5,820 feet. Like I don't
No,
remember, but like
5,280 feet.
okay, yeah, that's me pulling that in my ass from like fifth grade. Um, so I'm trying
So
to
yeah,
think. So you are like in the last steps of this, and but you have like a window. Like how? So you're at this. You're in the middle of this 5 to 21 months window, correct?
pretty much, yeah.
Any idea where about in that window you sit right now?
So in terms of the vaccine waiver, so I just kind of early at the beginning of this week, because I was away last week, right? So at the beginning of this week, I kind of submitted all the documentation that they need, and from day one, the second lawyer told me, thank you, 1.6 kilometers. From the very beginning, they told me, once you submit all your documents and you make the down payment for the retainer, it'll within 28 days we'll file your vaccine waiver. So right now my waiver hasn't been officially filed because they're actually starting to comb through my waiver properly to make sure that I have like, they had me write a personal statement, so they're making sure that everything lines up to that personal statement. I have supporting documentation that lines up with why I'm refusing these kinds of things and whatnot. So by the time they file my waiver, it will be right before I'm supposed to have my interview.
Okay.
Yeah.
So okay. I'm a little excited. I'm not nearly as excited as I was like 5 minutes ago, but it sounds like you might get to go home
Um,
some semi soonish.
I'm hoping that it gets approved on like it'll be 5 to 21 months when they file it in a couple weeks, right? I'm
Hmm.
really hoping that because go for my interview and they've seen that I've been waiting so long, that maybe that will push my approval up a little bit sooner than even the 5-month mark. But there's just like no one can give me a definitive timeline because it used to be a quick approval, but for some reason now everything is just dawdled.
Yeah, no
So
one can give you a definitive timeline because it's the fucking government and they don't know what the hell they're doing.
exactly. So it's like, I appreciate that because like they're not trying to get my hopes up unintentionally, and
Yeah.
they're being real. So I appreciate that, right? But it's like I'm trying not to think about it. Like I'm trying to view this like I viewed like this whole 2-year process prior, whereas it's just a bump in the road and then I have the rest of my life, right? So
Yeah.
I'm just even like now with this whole vaccine waiver thing, I'm still looking at it as okay, it's another bump in the road, but I still have the rest of my life. Like that's I'm trying to look at this in a positive way, um, because I've trained my brain to just kind of look at the bright side of everything. Because look, being negative all the time is so
Mhm.
fucking exhausting.
Yes, I completely hear you on that. So I've got one last question for you.
Yes.
Tomorrow you meet someone else who is getting ready to do the exact same thing. What do you suggest for them? What's your what would you recommend them to do to get through this process maybe better than you've been able to?
If they're not already married, do
Right.
the get married on US soil and just stay there for 6 months.
Okay.
Like that would be the first thing I would pitch. If that's not possible, then if you go through the route I am, yes, 100% hire a lawyer, get everything like every step of the way, just do everything immediately to help expedite it a little bit. Understand what you're going through. Like I could have technically filed my vaccine waiver 6 months ago. So I guess there is a little bit of a fault on me for that, but in the grand scheme, 6 months wasn't really going to make a difference either way, with the rate of approval, right?
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I would just tell them be on point with filing and collecting everything. Don't dawdle. Hire a lawyer, and just financial like make sure that you are willing to spend up to 10,000 more dollars than on paper it looks like you're going to spend.
Damn.
Because like what once like all the fees aside, I will have spent almost $10,000 trying to immigrate to the US.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's
So
for
it's
some people that's like a fucking like half of their like a quarter of their income.
I know. I know. It's crazy to think about. Like luckily I'm still waiting on kind of like an outstanding paycheck, right? But I had to
Hmm.
pay the second lawyer. I took a loan from my parents to pay for that, right? So I didn't
Okay.
want to, but it's just
Yeah.
like this is where I'm at and I need it. And thankfully they're in a comfortable financial situation where that's not a big deal. But yeah, you have to like the filing fees aside, like you just need to be prepared in case you need to either hire a lawyer or you need to resubmit everything
Hmm.
again. So have $10,000 set aside for anything that you might encounter.
I lied and I had another question, but I completely forgot
You're
what it
good.
was.
Ask all the questions you
I,
have, man. Ask all the questions you
I
have.
I completely forgot what it. Oh my god. You know
You're
what?
good.
I'm gonna let it go, and maybe it comes back because if I just try to dig it back up, I'll never find
Okay.
it. Um.
I'd also let them know that it is like a technically a 3-step, like 3 major steps. So first, you just file the general paperwork and all the supporting documents, and then there's a
Mhm.
waiting phase there. And once that initial thing is approved, then you have a medical exam, and the medical exam is where they check the vaccine, like you're up to date on your vaccines, and they also just check that you don't have tuberculosis, you don't have any STDs, your lungs and your heart are in good condition, and then they do some blood work as well in there, and that's an additional fee. Like for me, there's
Of
only
course.
3 physicians that are like authorized, by the US government here in Ontario. Thankfully, all three of them are relatively in close distance, but looking at the fees for each of them, those will cost anywhere from $300 to $600 additionally to get all that done. So you have to do that, and then there's your final interview, which for me, for some reason, is not in Toronto. I have to drive out to Montreal for it, which is about a 5 hour drive for me.
Okay.
And
All
my
right.
interview's at 7 in the morning on top of that.
So you got to go. It's like you got to get a room. Like, I
Yeah,
mean, I
I got
guess
to
you
get
could
an
leave at like,
Airbnb or
I guess you could
something.
leave at 1 in the morning or whatever. But yeah.
It's not worth it. I'd rather go
No.
in, fresh with sleep, right? The other perk of like having a lawyer throughout all of this is, yeah, they get on you if you haven't submitted X, Y, and Z, if you're lollygagging behind and stuff like that. And I think 2 weeks before I have that interview, I'm going to have a video call with them, and my husband will have to be present as well, where we're just going to like, this is what they're going to ask you in the interview, and then go over all of my answers to make sure that we just kind of knock it out of the park in the first thing, the first go. Yeah.
I remember my question.
Okay.
Did you consider any other route that is more common to get to America in order to try and make this happen?
You mean the Mexican border?
Yes.
um, if I had not filed paperwork, sure, that would have been
Uh-huh.
great. But the point, like, I've already dropped so much money into this and so much
Yeah.
time. And on top of that, if it is found out that my husband was like harboring an illegal, even though I'm a fucking Canadian, but if they found out like he would also be at risk, and then there's the off chance that they either might not allow me into the US for X amount of years, or I'm banned any sort of entry to the US and applying for any
Right.
sort of
Yeah.
visa. So
Yeah,
the risk,
that is a risk, and like from everything we see, like it seems like they're not doing anything about it. But like the one person we'd want here would be the one that they sent back for any fucking stupid reason. You know what I mean? Like,
right. Exactly. Yeah, so it's just the risk does not outweigh it, so we just got to wait at this point.
yeah, exactly. So I want to second what Cannoli said. It will work out. She's being persistent and thorough. This will all end and we're going to get wasted in celebration. I agree. I think everything's going to work out in the end. I think it sucks that it's been annoying and frustrating and everything retarded.
Mhm.
But it sounds like you can almost see the light at the end of the tunnel.
I'm pretty confident that things will work out in my favor. It's really just getting over the hump of, I've been married for 2 years coming up soon, and I haven't really been able to experience married life yet.
Yeah, and you've got like goals and dreams and shit, and they're holding you back, and that's fucking
Exactly.
horseshit. Yeah,
Which is it also feels a little bit ironic. It's just like, oh, the land of the free, but fuck your medical choices and your medical beliefs. Like, fuck what you think is best for you. You have to comply to us or nothing. It's-
so last question, and then we're gonna wrap it up because you
okay.
said we got an hour, and I think
Mhm.
that's perfect. Minus the COVID shit, would you say it's pretty easy to become an American citizen? Or
Yeah,
not a citizen, like get a visa to come to
yeah,
America?
I would say yes. Because like again, most of the stuff that's on even that vaccine list, it's stuff that you would have gotten already. I think you would. Yeah, I agree with you, constitutional
Yeah,
slacker. Just a quickly side note on that, I just think you guys have a lot more freedom in the sense that it is not just one giant body that controls everything. States do
right.
take power when they want to, kind of deal. So you have a lot more freedom in that respect, in which you just don't have one supreme leader controlling all of the places you live in. But oh, stacker, my bad, sorry. um but it's, yeah, even that vax, like, you just might have to get up to date on a tetanus shot, which I know
Yeah,
is like not generally dangerous, but it's just like I've been fine without getting any up to date vaccines for half of my life at this point.
I
Over
haven't
half of
had
my
it.
life.
Yeah, I haven't had a tetanus shot in fucking forever. Like,
There
and you're
you
supposed to
go.
get them every so often, and like, no one does that anymore.
Exactly. So it's like I've been fine. So it's like why do I need to if you can even look at my full medical history and see that I've been okay without it. So it is what it is, but yes, I would say other than the waiting time due to the incompetence of government, it's
Mhm.
pretty easy to become a US citizen if you have a valid reason.
Right.
There I have considered like just applying for US jobs to see if like they'll grant me a work visa.
Hey,
So
why not? Yeah.
right? Because like, I mean, it's not like there's any harm in it, right? And that might expedite the process a little bit more, but it's just been very hard to find, I guess, jobs that line up with my skill set in the specific area of Florida where I'll be moving.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on and do this, Vex. This has been very enlightening, and I think a big thing to take away is what we just said here is that it can be pretty easy to come to America legally. You don't have to do it the wrong way unless maybe you've got some weird nefarious reasons. But that's besides the point.
Hmm.
Um, that's wild that this has happened, and I'm excited for you to finally get over here.
Thank you, dude. I really appreciate that in all honesty. Thank you. And yeah, thank you for having me here as well. Any questions at all? Like I'm happy to answer them. Like I think there's maybe like one thing in my entire life that I won't talk about and I'm otherwise a pretty open book. So I'm happy to answer questions. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter, you can find me on YouTube, same username basically on everything. So,
Yeah, let me drop those links for anyone who might not have them already. They are in the description as well.
mhm.
You got anything coming up? You got any shows this weekend? I know you got something on Monday.
Yeah, I'll be on two shows on Monday. I'll be on Words of Paradise around 4 in the afternoon, Eastern Standard Time, and then at 9 o'clock we have part 2 of our Justice League review, which last week part 1 was really good. We got into some good discussion. I usually put out a like community post on my Vex Electronica channel, not the gaming channel.
I
I
see
usually
those
put
all the
out
time.
Yeah, I usually put one out on Sundays at the beginning of the week. But I've got some other appearances lined up next week. I think like after this, I need to do a few things and I wanted to get a workout in, but I am hoping to clip an entire video sometime this evening to premiere tomorrow on the gaming channel. I know it's been a while since I posted gaming content. Um,
It takes
so I'm
longer.
you know what? It's not even that. It's just I just didn't have time to play fucking video games between work and everything.
Okay.
So I actually much prefer doing the gaming videos because it's so much easier to edit them. Like with the movie and like TV show stuff, like if you use clips, then it has to be under 7 seconds. And even then, depending on who it is, they'll still fucking strike you. Like when I did my Flash review, even though I was within the parameters, WB was still giving me hassle. So that's why like the clipping on that video specifically is worse than my other ones. But with gaming, because it's just kind of like free form content. Yes, some games it's the exact same thing. There's no
Uh-huh.
copyright thing. So I can just post like a bunch of cutscenes or unedited like gameplay footage and
Yeah.
have zero issues. It
Right.
makes the process so much easier for me to just make gaming videos. But I just didn't have time to actually like game or get really invested in. Now I fucking have the time to. So
You got Jacob's raging a little bit. Doesn't cuss, but hearing the crap you've had to go through and people just walk across the border really fucking pisses him off.
Yeah,
Yep.
thank you, Jacob. Yeah, I know you're a stickler for language, so I appreciate that. Yeah, it's kind of built into my language on when it comes to content. I have to monitor what I say so much at work that it's just like this is kind of the I can just say whatever comes to mind now. I don't have
Yeah.
to worry about it, right? So
Yeah, I always go like I should try and not cuss so much, and then that thought just leaves my mind, and it's like
there
nope,
you go.
like
Exactly. I'm the same way. I'm just like, yeah, maybe I should try and be like articulated and just like, oh fuck this movie. I'm just like, oh well, there that goes.
yep. So yeah, that's gonna do it. Everyone, thank you for watching. I wasn't planning on anyone watching this. I was just doing this purely because I wanted to know what Vex was going through with all of this, and this has been awesome. So everyone, thank you for joining. I've got another one of these coming up with Paul Hadouken. It's going to be completely different. We're going to talk about music and how he goes about creating his music because I also have an interest in music. So yeah, once again, thank you, Vex. And I don't have an outro, so I'm just going to sit here and awkwardly wave while we wait for StreamYards to not be a dumbass.